In this session, we will go over the Geographic Information System, or GIS app, within Datum. We will discuss the GIS interface and the options that are available within the app. We will add layers to the maps, including thematic layers, boundary layers, and discuss layer ordering. We will edit the layer stack, which allows you to add or remove layers on the fly. We will also edit the layer transparency, which allows you to edit the transparency of various layers that are placed on top of one another. We will show you how to select data dimensions in the GIS app, and this differs slightly when compared to the Data Visualizer and Pivot Table applications. We will discuss GIS legends and labels within Datum, saving favorites, which is also very similar to the Data Visualizer and Pivot Table applications, as well as clearing data dimension selections, also similar to the previous applications. We will create a map with multiple thematic layers, and we will edit the various background layers that are available within the GIS application. In this particular session, we're going to go over the GIS application. You can see I'm logging back into the training environment. I'm logging in again as an analysis user. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And I'm going to load the GIS application. So this is what the interface looks like when we first load the GIS app. We can see we have a number of different selections on the top left-hand corner, and then we have the same table, chart, and map selections as we had in our previous applications. Let's go through the options on the left-hand side. If we hover over, we'll see the name. This is called the event layer, and this layer allows us to map individual events on our map within the GIS application. There's currently not much data that's collected through this single events in Datum, so we're going to ignore this option for now. We also have the facility layer, which allows us to map facilities by ownership or type within the application. Next, we have a boundary layer, which allows us to add boundaries for geographic areas such as regions or districts. Now we have thematic layers 1 through 4. These allow us to map data elements within the GIS application. Now, even though we can map up to 4 layers within this GIS application, it's not recommended to go past 2, because when we have 4 on there, it is very difficult to interpret the map. So now that we've gone over some of the basics of the interface, let's go ahead and make our first map. I'm going to click on thematic layer 1, and then on edit layer. We can see that the dimension selection is a little bit different in the GIS application when compared to our Data Visualizer and Pivot Table applications. For starters, I'm going to select my value type, and I'm going to select this as a data element. Next, I'm going to select my data element group, and I'll stick with the DL All Demo Data group that I've been working with previously. For the data element, I'm going to map HTC tests, the period type, I'm interested in doing this for a quarter, so I'm going to select quarterly as my period type. Note that we can use these 2 arrows to move between the previous and next year. So if I want a quarter during the October 2014 financial year, I can click on this back arrow and then select the period. Next, we select our organization unit, and I'm interested in mapping this particular data element by site. So I'm going to select In-Country Level 4. We now define our legend for the map. We can see there's several options in this legend tab. We can alter the legend type to be either automatic or predefined. A predefined legend allows you to apply a custom legend to your map. We can also define the classes or method that allow us to define how the data is separated on the map. In this case, we have 5 classes, and the method is equal counts. So it's going to create 5 colors between the red and green color schemes that we see here, and separate the data according to equal counts for each of these individual classes. We note that the low color is red, and the high color is green. We also have a size associated with these colors, with the lower color receiving a smaller size value than the high color. Last is the Options tab. In this Options tab, we can show labels. Because we are mapping data by site, we are not going to include the labels for these particular data values, as that would be very hard to interpret on this particular map. So once I've selected all of my data dimension selections, I click on Update. And when that's been completed, we can see that we have mapped the data by site on this particular map. If we hover over one of the data values, we will see the data value associated with the site name. Now this is not so useful as there's no boundaries, and it just looks like a couple dots in the middle of the ocean. So let's add a boundary layer to this map so we can see the country layout. In order to do that, I go to the boundary layer and select Edit Layer. I can then select my organization unit levels, and I will select In-Country Level 3 to add in the boundary layers of the districts. I'm going to go to Options and Show Labels so I can see the district names. I'm just going to change the size of the names and click on Update. Now we see the names of the districts associated with the district boundaries. We can also save this map as a favorite, just as we have been doing previously. We just click on Favorites, Add New, and then enter the favorite name. So that's the basics of creating a map in Datum. Let's go through another example where we have two layers on the map. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this map, and we do that the same way we have been doing in the other applications. I click on Map, and I click on Clear Map. This will remove my previous dimension selections from the map. Now we can see I have a blank map to work with once again. So let's add in two layers to this particular map. So let's create our first layer. And in this particular case, I'm interested in an indicator. I'm going to work with the indicator group, DL All Indicators, and I'm going to select the HTC positive results. Now you will notice in the map we cannot select all the different disaggregates that are associated with our data elements. So for instance, we do not see age, sex, or test result located on the dimension selection menu. For this reason, indicators can be created so we can actually select those different disaggregates and map them as needed. I'm going to work with the financial October year, 2014. And I'm going to select my organization units and map this at the site level. I'm going to change the legend colors a little bit, just so we can see how this looks like. And I'm going to hide the labels once again, because adding those labels to the site level will make this map very difficult to read. I click Update, and now I see the results of the dimension selections that I've made displayed on the map. Before, where we entered a boundary layer for the districts, now we're going to enter a thematic layer for the districts, so we can overlay the HTC positive results over the total HTC tests that have been received. So in order to add that second thematic layer, I click on the second thematic layer 2, and then edit the layer. In this particular case, I'm interested in working with the data element. In the DL All Demo Data group, as mentioned before, we want to layer HTC positive results over the total HTC results received. We'll work with the same period type, financial October 2014. For the organization units, we're now interested in displaying the districts. So I'm going to select In-Country Level 3 as my district layer. We can see the legend once again, and I'm going to alter the colors again. And we're going to show the labels for this particular district. Then I can go ahead and click on Update, and we see what the map looks like. We can see because the district names are actually our second thematic layer, the sites are overlaid on top. So when I hover over the sites, it will give me the site name. You can see when I hover over the district, it doesn't give me any additional information. It's important to note that the map displays data based on how we've entered the layers into the GIS application. Because I've entered the site level results as my first thematic layer, this is defaulted to be the topmost layer of the map. In this particular case, it's useful to enter in the labels so we can also see the district totals. The color is also representative of how the districts are separated on this map according to the data values that are associated with these districts. And we can see here that Bird District seems to have the highest number of test results received, as well as many sites with the high number of HTC positive results as well. We can of course save this as a favorite, just like we did previously, and then of course add that to our dashboard. Let's look at a couple other options for this map. We could remove layers if we want to, and just look at one layer at a time. So my sites are the thematic layer 1, and I can actually remove this from the map by deselecting it from my layer stack. Now we see just the districts and their associated data on this particular map. I can also scroll over the district and I will see the associated data. Let's add that layer back in. We can also reduce the transparency of the layer. Just by reducing the data value next to that particular layer on the layer stack or opacity option. Typically 80 is a good opacity to leave the data values at. What this Google Streets option does is actually remove the Google Streets from the background layer. Now because Demoland is a made-up country, it actually does not have any background for Google Streets. This will just remove the ocean from the background. If I look at an actual country, we can see the country layer is actually removed. So Google Hybrid and OpenStreetMap are other types of maps that we can add to our background layer if we're interested in doing so. So we can have a look at what Google Hybrid looks like. So you can see the topography is a little clearer on this particular map. And then OpenStreetMap, which is another open source type of mapping application. And we can see how that looks like as our background. So for countries with actual data and actual coordinates, we can add in or remove these background layers as required. So let us review some of the concepts that we've gone through in this GIS demonstration. We first discussed the GIS interface, including the various layers that are available within the GIS application in Datum. This includes the event layer, facility layer, boundary layer, and the thematic layers 1 through 4. In our demonstration, we focused on the thematic layers as well as the boundary layer by creating a map with site-level data and district-level boundaries. When we create a thematic layer, we noted that selecting our data dimensions is a little bit different when compared to the data visualizer and the pivot table. We can see here that the data and periods are selected together, followed by the organization unit. For maps, we also select a legend, where we can define the legend type, the classes, the method, the colors, and the size of the colors on the map. We can also add in labels by clicking on Options and Show Labels. After we created the first map, we then created a second map with 2 layers. we discussed the importance of adding layers and what that means when they're displayed on the map. We first added data for thematic layer 1 at the site level, and then added a second layer with district level data. If we had added the districts as our first layer, it would appear overlaid on top of the site level data. This may not necessarily be what we would like, and therefore layering order should be carefully considered when creating maps within Datum. We can edit the layer stack by adding and removing layers quickly from the right-hand side menu. We can also edit the transparency of the layers by editing the values next to the thematic layers. As a last step, we discussed removing and adding different backgrounds from the map. That covers most of the GIS basics. Now that we've gone through a demonstration of the various analysis applications in Datum, we recommend that you try and take some time, if you haven't already, to go through the exercises for each of these applications. This will allow you to understand how things work in a little bit more detail and give you some hands-on time working with these applications.